My name is Bruce Anthony James. Born and raised here in Havana. Well, actually born in Gaston County in the hospital in Quincy. Lifelong resident of Havana. I attended public schools here in Havana. I am 62 years of age, November 21st, 1959. My father's name is Horace James. He was born and reared in Jameson. Okay. My grandfather's name was Johnny James, and my grandmother's name was Lily Mae James, all reared in Jameson. My mother, Nora James, raised right here in Havana. Her mother's name was Ruby Thomas. They are all lifelong residents of Havana. Well, on my father's side, my grandmother lived again in Jameson, so I would go over there a lot, but I would not go there as much as I would visit my grandmother. My grandmother that lived here, Ruby Thomas, she pretty much raised my sister and I. It was like my grandmother's home, or my great-grandmother's home, is on First Street, and our home was just one street over. And so we would spend most of our time with my grandmother that lived here than we would in Jameson. Used to work as a cook in the airport in Bainbridge, at the airport up there.
That was Ruby?
Yeah, Ruby Thomas. Yeah, she worked years up there, and but after moving back to Havana, she was more like cleaning homes for the white folk, and she was employed the Shelfers and the Tullis. I don't know if you've heard those two names, but they were two of the prominent families here. And so she would clean their house. That was her daily occupation, and pretty much raise their kids. So, she spent all of her time, not an educated woman, but, she was a phenomenal lady with a whole lot of mother wits and wisdom. And I talk about this all the time. It's amazing how they did not have any form of education, but she was an avid reader of King James Version of the Bible. And I can't do King James Version. I just have to get something. I just can't pull the words out. It's just a New International Version or whatever version. But I used to ask her, how in the world can you read King James Version and you hardly ever went in school? She said, the Lord will show it to you, And so my other grandmother, who lived in Jameson, both of my grandmothers were very spiritual. But this grandmother, Lily Mae James, that lived in Jameson, she was like really, really spiritual. Just a different level of it. And like most women that lived here in Havana, my grandmother that lived in Jameson worked here in the packing house. That was her main job. She came actually from working in the barn stringing tobacco on those slats right there, to working here at the packing house. So that was her. What do I want to be a part of the Tobacco Museum? What's good about that? And I said, the only thing that I can tell you what's good about the Tobacco Museum is when we were actively in the fields, it was somewhere that you said you never want to be. Yeah. So that in itself, even though the history of tobacco, the people who own the tobacco fields made millions, all of that. But it also motivated you to say, I do not want to do this the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And they said, I'm going to Detroit, I'm going to New York, I'm going to college, I'm going to trade school, I'm going anywhere but here. So that in itself, it has a much deeper meaning than just tobacco. Robert Richardson, he shifted from I worked for Jack Burke. I know you probably heard of that. Well, Burke fields were down in Scotland, and I was just telling my son the other day, right where St. James Church is on 159. I used to hate that place. Those were the longest tobacco fields I ever seen in my life. And my Uncle Robert was the little straw boss, he and Mr. Robert Wester. And I could never find my row. I'll come out my row with the tobacco, bring it out to the barge, and when I turn around, I'm lost. And you had these primers who were low down dirty. And we were just talking about this Thursday night. They were just low down dirty. They knew you couldn't find your row, so they'd have tobacco this stacked this high, and you this high, and you struggling trying to come out, and you stick your fingers down in that tobacco, and my uncle would take a tobacco stalk and cut me across the back of my head or neck. He said, if you come back out here again with it, I promise you, you won't be able to walk. And I go and find my row. My sister was working in the tobacco field as well, and she could hear me over there crying. And so they ended up having to tie something up at the top of the row where I could find my way, right? But man, it was something. It was an experience, and it was all community folks. You know, these are the people that you go to school with. You know, the truck was waiting on you when you got out of school. You know, so you got to hit the fields, and it was something. You know, no, those people didn't play. You know. You're going to work and you're going to do it right. Yeah. And if you didn't do it right, you had a problem.
Yeah, you on the bus.
Yep. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, so Pine Park Elementary School, that became Havana Elementary School right here on 27, that was the school. I mean, and we had teachers back in those days that, well, all the way through high school, but in Pine Park, there were teachers there that didn't necessarily go to college to get a degree, because they started teaching in such an early time that if they had a certain skill level, they were like grandfathered in, you're bona fide. And those teachers were just like unbelievable. Mr. Julius Fisher, who I'm sure that you've heard of, was the first principal at Pine Park, and the only principal in Gaston County history that came here to be a principal that never was a teacher. He's the only person in Gaston County that was a principal from day one. And he did not play the radio. He was mean, terribly mean, but loved kids, and he was determined to make you get an education. So for all of us in this area, and develop just lifelong relationships with the kids that you went to school with, because you know it was just that close knit, and we were in school, in the tobacco field, in the same community, and so it was just like one huge family. So here's my mom, bless her heart. My mom made me and my sister integrate Havana High School. If we were not the first ones, it was just a handful, like maybe 7 kids that went to Havana. This was 6th grade now. And my mom made us go. I didn't want to go, my sister didn't want to go, my daddy didn't want us to go, but my mom, into politics and into this movement, you going. Not because she wanted us to go to school with white kids. She wanted us to go and prove a point. We're in this predominantly white school. All the black kids are picking at us and telling us that, you know, your mama think y'all better than us and that kind of stuff. And I had to deal with that, got a couple of fights. And so my sister I was not smart. I can just tell you that now, in my opinion. I was lazy, and I did not do things to my full potential. My sister was just naturally smart. She was very smart.
Is she older than you are?
Yes, and 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 so I never will forget this. Um, they had a science project, and my dad again was hands-on, and he put together this science project with my sister that was just unbelievable. And they had all of these science projects up. Now, granted, you got to understand, there's only about 25, maybe 20 black kids in this school. That was pushing it on the high side. I think more like 10. And they had the science fair. And I never will forget, my sister came to where I was and said, we need to go home. I said, why? She said, they have torn up my science project. And she called my mama. And that was not good. And so, you know, quite naturally, you couldn't find out who tore it up. You know, the kids obviously knew it was a good project, but they didn't want her to win. And, you know, the teachers at the time were all white. There were no black teachers in there. And, you know, they tried to do their thing, but it did something. It really did something to me. My dad was really upset. A lot of the kids in our community thought we were rich. I don't know why to the day they thought we were rich. My mama did not have a good job. My daddy, they had a job, but it wasn't like they had a job to making crazy money. But what they were looking at was the outside appearance, okay? And so my mom on the side with my grandmother, she would clean the Shelfers' house, okay? And the Shelfers would give, I just drove by there the other day, I do that a lot now since I'm retired. Just kind of go drive by and look at stuff and think about how it used to be and how you used to couldn't really walk through these communities. And the Shelfers would give my mother all of their kids' clothes and bring them to my mom. And, oh man, I got all this new stuff, new sneakers, new shoes and suits, and everybody thought we were rich. But what my mom would do is the stuff that I could wear, she would give it to me, and right down the street up down the road there, right behind Palace Church, Mom would take it down to what Mama Duke had quite a few kids. She had, matter of fact, 17, 2 sets of twins and 1 set of triplets. And so Mama would take the clothes to them. And so, you know, to go back to school, I even had some kids ask me, where do you get them clothes from? Because, you know, I wasn't supposed to be looking like that. And my mom thing was, when you get up in the morning, you're going to take a bath, and my dad too, and you're going to be well groomed. You know, your clothes are going to be clean, they're going to be ironed, your shoes are going to be clean, and when you come home, you're going to take it off because, hey, look, you're in an environment that you really gotta step your game up, you know. And in other words, don't give the people something don't be who they say you are. That's what, you know. And some of the kids couldn't afford that, but they still went there anyway and did well. I mean, so it was a task to juggle between, in other words, you're trying to what's the word I'm trying to use? You're trying to be who somebody else wants you to be, you know, to fit in. To adjust, that's the word. You're trying to adjust to a different culture. And the only thing that I can say about the whole experience was it allowed you to understand who these people were, whether or not they wanted to understand who we were, but they understand. And so my dad always said, you never hate people. You won't make it to heaven hating people. You know, you just gotta deal with people the way they deal with you, you know. And so if you see that hate, you just keep it moving. And so the bottom line to all of it, which never made any sense to me after I got grown, is that I don't care how you shelter, whether you're black or white, Hispanic, I don't care who you are. I don't care how you try to shelter a child growing up into a box. Eventually, they're gonna have to step out of that box and go over here and deal with people. If you try to keep them from all white folks, that's stupid, because there's nowhere in the world that's all white folks. If you try to keep them all black folks, that's stupid, because there's nowhere in the world there's all black folks. So you're gonna have to learn to adjust and deal with people, whether they're racist or whether they're not, or whether they, regardless of who they are, whether they're gay or wherever, you gotta be able to adjust to deal with people.